I know that this is going to be a recurring issue. Did not go through and manually record the replays or anything, so we're going to
Yeah,
have to
it's fine.
leave ourselves in Magic Online's capable hands. But hopefully, it will hold up for that long at least.
Yeah. My favorite part of this deck is you labeled it big blue red, but it clearly has black in it. And the first list, I think, had Monster Mentor, like off a Tundra or something, right?
Well, so that was the kind of greedy list that I played in the challenge, the most recent
Yeah.
one. You see the one mentor off the one
Yeah.
tundra, and I guess Ragavan treasures are mana fixing in a very loose sense. But yeah, so just kind of pushing the envelope there, seeing how far I could take it. I think the kind of Grixis base is pretty straightforward, just in terms of like you want to. The red cards are pretty good at the moment, and then the tutors are just kind of irreplaceable for what they do. Um, so I think you need that at the very least, and then if you want to be adventurous and try and touch white for mentor or some other cards, you can do that. But I think once you're adding the fourth color to the deck, you really need to keep that to a minimum.
I agree with that 100%. It is funny that Goldfish basically labels all of these 4C because it just thinks the Sphinx of the Steel Wind is like a real spell.
Well, that, and also once you get to a certain point, the decks are just kind of quite soupy.
Yeah.
Where you build the blue decks where you kind of choose this lane that you want to be in, and you add all of the broken restricted cards, and then you
Uh-huh.
add a bunch of the good interaction that you want, and then it's just okay. I have 10 to 15 slots left over. How do I want to fill out the deck? And so maybe that means PO, or maybe that means like random assorted red creatures. Maybe it's Hull Breacher was the go-to thing for a time. So
Yeah.
there's actually a kind of interesting flexibility in how you build these decks in Vintage, where you can't do the thing you do in Legacy of you just fill it out with a bunch of fours and then tinker around the edges for the last few slots.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. What I noticed was I think having non-blue threats is actually a pretty big premium right now, so you can force like awkward exchanges by people leaving a Pyroblast. And I think that's what one of the things Walila and to a lesser extent Ragavan are do a really good job at doing.
Yeah, I would put Dreadhorde Arcanist in that boat as well. And
Hmm.
so this is a dynamic that really has developed over the past few months of Vintage, where you have Flusterstorm and Pyroblasters, two of the premier interactive spells in the format. And so any threat that dodges both of those at the same time goes a long way. So red creatures fall into that bucket. I mean, creatures in general fall into that bucket,
Yeah.
but um, there aren't that many good blue creatures anyway, and the ones that do exist, like Hull Breacher, I mean, those are good in their own right, but they are susceptible to Pyroblast. But yeah, in a lot of the time in Vintage, you play a fast Lelia off your artifact mana, and they can't deal with it, and they only have a short window to deal with it before it just runs away with the game.
Yeah. I
That being
mean,
said, because this is
mhm.
Vintage, you can get Vintage, and so you can have
Right.
this good board state with Eulalia and just die on turn two to Time Vault combo, Tinker, Underworld Breach, whatever. So
Hmm.
you haven't locked up the game at that point. But that is part of why I actually do favor the kind of unfair blue strategies
Yep.
over the fair ones, is that you're much better at suddenly flipping the script in the game. Whereas if you're playing like Bug or Jeskai or something, you get into these spots where like you can resolve Ancestral and then Gush or whatever, but you don't have the cards to dig for in your deck to actually get yourself out of the situation.
Yeah. I've played Rug Zero or Teamer Xerox, as I guess the SCG style guide would call it, multiple times. It's pretty difficult to win against Bazaar decks in game one in those decks, unless if you like wasteland their land and they don't have another Bazaar or whatever. Like obviously those games don't really count. Whereas if you play a deck with Tinker Citadel or Tinker Sphinx of Steelwind, it's just so easy to like be like, oh, I'm in a bad board state. Let's just see if they have nothing. I can just win. You know.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Is that because you have these pillars of the format, you have shops over here, less so for this batch of events, but I think shops is actually picking up again in a decent way. And then you have all the various bizarre decks over here, and then all the assorted unfair fair blue decks. You have a bunch of like white creature decks now popping up. There's a lot of different stuff you have to prepare for, and not much overlap in the cards that are good against each of them. And so that's why there's always this dynamic in Vintage of you see a Flusterstorm in your opening hand, and it's like, well, either this is going to be one of the absolute best cards in the matchup, or its literal only value here is to pitch to forcible because my opponent's playing shops, right? And so when you play the fair blue decks, because Bazaar is this like looming threat, you're so bad in game one against those. Assuming here stuff like Jeskai or Rug, as opposed to like Bug, which is pretty good against Bazaar. But let's say you're on Jeskai or just like straight blue red, like the Murktide deck that Bullwinkle ported over to Vintage. 4 wastelands, no strip mines and all. And so that deck, you're so far behind against Bazaar in game one that when it comes to sideboard, you either have to just devote like 7 to 8 slots for that and then have things go right in both postboard games, or you just give up the matchup entirely, which is fine. Like maybe that's a gamble you think you can take. And I kind of did that with the shops hate in my sideboard for this event, although part of why I could do that was I think those decks are actually not that bad as matchups anyway, and because you have the unfair stuff, you can just not draw them. Right. Versus Bazaar, where if you're a fair blue deck against Bazaar, like your deck just doesn't function. Like it doesn't do what you need it to do. So with that in mind, I think even though the unfair blue decks are more exploitable in one sense, you actually get to leverage your sideboard a lot better because you don't either write off 15-20% of the format entirely, or you don't have 8 to 9 sideboard slots just completely spoken for.
Yeah, I think it's that's pretty much going to remain true, I think, for the next at least year or so until some other unspeakable bomb hits the format, I guess, is how I would put it by this point, right?
And this is also my own personal bias showing through, but to me, if I'm playing Vintage, it's because this is a unique opportunity to play with Moxon and to like do this hideously busted stuff on turn 2 or turn 3 and like tinker for both the Citadel and so on. And it's like, I don't want to be casting fucking Deathrite Shaman. Like, what are we doing here, right? Like, I've seen this organized before. I wasn't on the right side of history then. I'm not going to be on it now. I'm going to, take this format for what it is. And this is like the like rich dessert, right? Like this is the triple chocolate brownie or whatever, which, you don't want to have too much of because getting Vintage is a pretty sick feeling sometimes, but it's very nice to have sometimes as part of the overall palette. And like if it's just an expanded version of Legacy, which also does not appeal to me right now, then that's not what I signed up for.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. And I mean, I play a reasonable amount of Vintage about once per month, and that's about it. Like maybe like 2 or 3 days of just like constant figuring out what do I want my list to look for a showcase, if there is a showcase, which unfortunately this quarter around they decide not to do that. But
it is sad. Yeah, I don't know why we have Pauper instead of standard or Vintage when Pauper has just been in dire straits for months, even after the bans. But yeah, there is a PGQ tomorrow actually, so maybe the information here will be useful to some people for that. But so this is what you're seeing here is this is the list that I used to. I went 7-2 at Eternal Weekend, and Abe Corrigan, who so after this there were 3 flights, of course, for Eternal Weekend. Yeah. This was the first one. I was unsure how many of them I wanted to play, but I thought I'll play at least one and see how it goes. So I played this in the first one. Abe Corrigan reached out to me and said he liked the look of the shell, but was brainstorming stuff for the second one. And so we kind of went back and forth on that. And then he went and just won the second one. He kind of came out of out of Magic retirement and just picked up Vintage on a whim for the first time, essentially, and just very easily won 5 figures in, whatever the painting is going to sell for. So just classic Abe maneuvers there. But
so do you want to know a funny story about the Mox Ruby one? Yeah. A similar thing sort of happened. This Maryland guy, Andy Vorel, you might know him from SCGs or whatever. He didn't play Vintage, and he's like, yeah, I'm bored. I'm just going to play it. And he also won the Mox Ruby on Sunday. So it's kind of like, I think Vintage is a lot more accessible than people give it credit for in terms of playing the games. Like, skills do transfer over. Like, obviously you can get Vintage, but it's not like some weird... It's not completely different from all of the other Magic you've ever played,
Right. It's like different enough to be unique and interesting, at least on paper, but it's not so different that it feels like you're doing something completely, outrageous. So, so the basic idea behind this deck, and this kind of builds on, I know we've covered some other Vintage tournament runs in the past. This is just a continuation of that, basically. The idea is Urza Saga is one of the best cards in the format,
Yep.
and in particular is one of the best cards against the other blue decks, where it's this, the constructs often win the game by themselves. The third chapter is either finding Manifold Key to pair with Time Vault, or it's finding the specific marks, or like Black Lotus or Sol Ring you need to cast your other action. You can find specific hate pieces like Needle or Stargate Lantern against Sharps or Dredge. And it's just a phenomenal card overall. And specifically against the like Wasteland Force of Vigor decks, on paper, it seems like it should be bad there, right? But if you build your deck in such a way where this is more of a spell than a land, and this is a win condition that's taking the place of, I guess Ladias, right? Or Mental, or just whatever random 3-drops you would play in that spot, well then you have this win con, which not only dodges all of Force of Will, Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, what have you, but also if you're getting wastelanded, this is just another land. It's another thing that lets you cast your spells, which are now cheaper on average as well. So I knew that, again, didn't know how I wanted to fill out the last 10 slots in the deck, but I knew I wanted to be a big blue Saga deck with Tinker, with all of the artifact mana, and that overall package is just, I think, the best thing you can be doing in the format by a decent margin.
Also, one thing I think that happens a lot in these mirrors is you actually search up top a lot more than I think people give credit for. Especially if you don't have, one of your two pieces of the combo, then what do you want to do in a game that's being protracted where it's kind of even? Like maybe you're slightly ahead because you have a Saga about to fire off, but you're not so far ahead where you can just get a piece of artifact mana and hope that it's going to be good enough,
Yeah, and that's a notable feature of these lists. So you see not that many Ponder plus Preordain effects. This list has 2 tops, and the list that Abe won with and that I kind of tinkered with a bit has 3 tops in the main deck, which is it's a lot. That's a bold statement about that card. And I don't know if 3 is right. I was shaving down to 2 a decent amount at the time. But that card is just so phenomenal because one of the things that becomes really clear in these mirrors is so you have all of the the blue action spells, and then also if we kind of separate these out here, Force of Will, Pyroblast, and then Hydroblast as well post board, and then more Pyroblast. Basically, colored mana is at a real premium, and so it is pretty hard to cast a colored threat. So let's say Lelia, or especially something that's double blue like Narset, and defend it with Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, that kind of thing. And then also, if you're sitting back on Urza Saga, then your Moxen can contribute towards that. But then you also want to be able to, use the one other land that you have to cast one of these to kind of stop whatever big play they're going for. So if you can find a way to use excess colorless mana, that is a really good argument in favor of a card. And so that's why these just random 3-drops you see a lot more of. And that's why top, as part of why it's so good, is that compared to something like Preordain, where it almost commits you to taking some of those shields down at sorcery speed on your own turn, with top you just chill, you just sit there, you pass the turn, and you get to play this much more reactive game.
Yeah, and that's been my experience. I actually did play one of the EWs. Unfortunately, hadn't prepared as much as I wanted to because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to play it, so I just copied the other winners. The Alex McKinley Viverus on MTGO won the first one, I think, with Grixis Tinker Breach, so I played that list. I think if you're playing Grixis and you have Tinker in your deck, it's hard to go too wrong as long as you have a reasonable looking deck list otherwise, personally.
Yeah, I have gone pretty deep in the paint trying to find other Tinker Shells to mess around with for tomorrow. And it's maybe these changes are what make all the difference, but in reality, once you my deck and my opponent's deck will have 50 of the same cards, and I don't know how much difference the last few slots actually make in practice, so I'm not sure. But the other thing with top is because your main plan in a lot of games is Tinker for Citadel, you don't want to have too many cards that make it hard to clear the top of your deck. So Flusterstorm is actually a pretty big offender here, although I did have quite a few games. I'm not sure if they were in Eternal Weekend or in this tournament that we're about to rewatch, where I was very happy to see Flusterstorm on top because it meant I had to pass the turn, but I also got to pass the turn with shields up to kind of win the fight on their turn. But once you hit top, that is basically game over most of the time because
it's just Yawgmoth's bargain by that point.
Yeah, because the way it works is you tap the top, you draw the card, top goes on top of your deck, and then you can just cast it for the 1 life from the top, and now you're in the same position, except you've drawn that card. And so it's just a better Yawgmoth's bargain. So it's kind of a phenomenal card. And then especially there's a nice trick here with Lelia in this list, where one of the issues with Lelia, again, is like you don't really want to be hitting these reactive cards, whereas with top, you just flip the top, and then you're guaranteed to hit the Lelia, or hit the top with the Lelia and just recast it again. So you turn this into like an actual Ophidian versus something that's more speculative.
I was going to point that out because I saw that happen in Vintage Cube, where people did not select that card very high, the Lelia, the Blade Reforged. And I'm just like, this card is phenomenal in Vintage Cube. I wonder if it has legs anywhere else, and we're finally, seeing get its just desserts, as I would say. Stop passing this card. It is really good. Okay.
Well, this card it is a recent addition to Magic Online. I've wanted to play this for a while, but because it was in the Strixhaven Commander decks, it just took a long time for them to actually get around to coding it and putting it up there. So now that it's there, you're seeing it make a mark in constructed formats. Not so much in Legacy yet, but I think maybe it's time it's going to come there as well. I don't know.
The problem is 3-drops in the Daze format. I think by this point, you have to realize that Daze is a huge player in that format, and I'm all less excited about random 3-drops, to be quite fair.
Speaking of random 3-drops, this was a realization that a lot of the big blue players came to, was that for those flex slots, I mean, I have Lelia here. You often see stuff like Dak Faden, Hull Breacher, whatever. Mm-hmm. A lot of players just cut all of those 3-drops because it's like, well, I feel like if my deck is functioning properly, then I don't need them. And if my deck isn't functioning properly, then a 3-drop, which maybe has specific colored mana requirements, is not going to get me out of that. So, the games of something like Dak is good. It looks very good, right? But often, if it's like rotting in your hand, then it's going to be less impressive. So, I think that might be the next step, honestly, is to just slim down that part of the deck as much as possible. Mm-hmm. For the challenge deck, Abe was very high on Khan the Great Creator as a way to, obviously phenomenal against all of these other big blue decks, and especially stuff like PO or 8-cast, any of the really artifact-centric decks. Great against Shops, which was making a minor resurgence. Not that bad against Dredge in game 1 too, where you can get the Tormod's Crypt or the Pithing Needle, and so on. And it's also just in your draws, which have a lot of the artifact mana, right? You have a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt. You can actually just turbo this thing out pretty reliably. And then Mentor, I think, is like, if this were a blue card or a red card or a black card, it would just be, I mean, it would still be restricted, but it would be even more just like unbelievably busted.
No, hold on. If it was a blue card, there was no way it would have been like, I think if it were blue, it would have just been such an egregious, clear, what the hell are they doing moment. Like, as it was, Mentor was still really powerful in a lot of formats. Only had to be restricted in Vintage. It didn't have to get the ban Legacy, I think partially because Top got the axe instead. Like, the Top Mentor thing is kind of nonsensical. And, the 3 tops here plus a Mentor let you manual. But you remember this, the Counterbalance Miracle top deck in Legacy with Mentors, usually 2 and 4 tops. It was just so easy to assemble your thing. And it was just like, it let you have a combo kill in your bad matchups, which I think was really, really powerful. So...
this card was the reason to play White in Vintage for a long time. This card single-handedly made White viable, essentially. And it took people a while to cotton on to how good this card was. And so it turned out that it was very good in the Xerox decks, where you would just play this 4 Mentor Jeskai deck and go nuts. And then also really good in these fast artifact mana decks where... especially with Citadel in the mix or whatever, you get some truly bonkers turns where you have to be worried about Modo lagging you too much because all of your mental triggers and your monk power triggers are going on the sack at the same time.
Hold on.
It becomes a whole mess.
That's only in the case if you have a potato for a computer.
Well, that's a real flex there, Jarvis. But anyway, so in terms of other differences between Eternal Weekend list and this list, you'll note one continuity actually is the 2 copies of a Braid. I figured this was just kind of a nice hedge against everything, where against shops, hits all of their log pieces. Against Dredge, like, it's bad, but having an out to hollow one isn't the worst thing in the world, especially if you have the other angles covered. And then against other big blue decks, it hits Citadel. It also hits just any of the artifact stuff, Time Vault, Key, and then also it kills the creatures. It kills Lelia, Ragavan, Dreadhorde Darkness. So if you just want a removal spell, I think this is one of the better ones, as opposed to something like Lightning Bolt, which is fine in terms of can contain stuff like Dak Faden or 1 mana versus 2, especially on the draw against Ragavan is a big deal. But I thought Braid was just a nice hedge, and I think that card is pretty good at the moment.
So one question for you. One of these decks has 3 Ragavans and the other doesn't. Can you explain the reasons to or not to play it real quick?
Yeah, I really go back and forth on this card. So
you're not even sure.
I'm not sure. I think for this weekend, I'm not going to play Ragavan.
Okay.
Basically, Ragavan is, in some ways, this is the best format for it, where against these like blue mirrors, you're likely to hit just like a random Mox or something, which you can cast, or you're going to hit some like busted thing. And I've definitely had my Mentor, my Time Walk, and my Tinker stolen more than I care to admit. And then also sometimes you hit them, you take their Flusterstorm or something, and now you have a line of defense for the broken play that you're going to follow up with post combat. So, very scary card in that sense. And that is where it's at its best. It's against other creature-like blue decks that are trying to high roll you. That being said, against like shops, for example, it can be very good against shops. Sometimes it's a thing that lets you just effortlessly grind through a sphere of resistance. On the other hand, sometimes, especially Ravager shops is making a bit of a comeback, like these creature-heavy shop decks, and it's pretty embarrassing there. Against Bazaar, like, it's pretty bad. Against the white creature decks, 2-1, especially in the face of like Thalia or whatever, is pretty embarrassing.
Hello? Are we still here, chat? Is it just Dom who's gone? Chat's here? Sounds like he's being abducted by an alien. No, Skype! Why would you do this, Skype? We had no issues during the set championships. Skype. I'm molding. Dom got surprise dashed by Ragavan? Possible. Well, we'll see when he gets back, but that's... What were we even talking about? I don't remember. We need Dom to come back. Okay, router issues 1 sec. Okay, yeah, Ragavan. Okay, so he's probably just restarting his router real quick, which is fine. We'll be back in a second. But yeah, Ragavan. Getting your Ancestral Recall stolen by Ragavan has to be like one of the worst feelings, obviously. I think just the thing that applies from Legacy applies even more here, that it feels really, really bad when your great cards get taken by Ragavan. But a lot of the time it's just going to hit, like, especially versus like Dredge. Just imagine getting a random card from the Dredge deck. It is not good. Like, there are just so many bad cards in the Ragavan deck. Like, I can't even think of a lot of them. All right. Yeah. So I think for Skolo shops, Ragvan's extremely good actually. But I think versus Ravager shops, it's like not great generally. I need Oath here. Monkey steals Oath. Well, oh, I see. I see. Because you tutored for the Oath, and then they hit it, but you wanted to draw the Oath. But they're not obviously not going to cast the Oath, because the Oath in play is just as good for you as if you played it, because Oath is symmetrical. Yeah, I don't know. I understand that Ragavan has really unpleasant play experiences, and it's probably just a mistake of a card to print. Alright, missed calls. How come it didn't? Alright, let's get this going.
Okay, we back?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I guess your router.
Yeah, router dropped for a bit.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get the screen back if you want to.
Yes, just reloading Moto here. Yeah, that's actually so catching up on Skype chat there. Justin Gennari mentioned Expressive Iteration. I think that card is, I mean, clearly it's phenomenal in basically every constructed format. And at a glance, you think it would be insane in Vintage too, right? Where you have Moxon that you can play for free off of it, and free spells, and your curve is super low, and so on. In practice, I think that card is actually kind of a trap because tying up like the decks that want to have all of that artifact mana are not well suited to playing a kind of a 2-color gold card at sorcery speed on their main phase. And if you can't do that, then it's like, well, it's a fine mid-game draw option in your Jeskai deck, but then at that point, there are so many other things competing with it too, like Merchant Scroll for Ancestral or the like Cruise Dig family of spells. Like it's not clearly the best option there in the way that it is basically in every other format. So that card not as great as you'd expect. And I think in a deck like these big blue decks or the Breach decks, just loading up on more preordains is going to be a better route there most of the time.
Definitely agree. All right, let's see what we got. All right, we're back with Leela, the Blade Forged.
Well, not anymore. I guess one in the sideboard here. But yeah, so finishing my thought about Ragavan, I think it's at its best in these fair blue decks and like the Jeskai or the Murktide decks, which do play more like the Legacy decks. It can back it up with a lot of cheap interaction and like wasteland effects and so on. Not at its best here, they're still pretty good sometimes. And we're going to see some matches, some like pseudo mirrors, still defined by that card.
This black square has to go, or I don't know what it is. It's probably the Skype app, isn't it?
It's you, my friend.
It's me. All right.
Yes.
I think that answers most of the questions I have about the deck. I guess are there? I have a question. Was Mycosynth Lattice actually good in this version?
I don't think it ever came up.
Yeah.
I actually don't know how. Did I resolve a Khan in the tournament? I think I like put it on the sack once and it got counted against a blue deck and that was it. So that whole avenue never really came up.
So
yeah,
my suspicion is it's like not actually very good because 10 mana is just so much to ask for in a turn cycle, and it also requires your Karn not to be killed. I think if you have Karn and it sticks, you're probably well enough off versus most of the format that you don't want to like. I kind of think the Lattice is like way win more essentially, but
I could believe that. Yeah,
that's just my intuition. Obviously, obviously there are games it's going to win where nothing else will win it. Like if you go like Land, Mox, Crypt, Karn, and then next turn you go like, I don't know, another Land and Mox and get the Lattice and play it, and then your opponent can't do anything. I just kind of think that you don't need to do that often enough because Karn prisons out all of their broken draws, essentially, right?
Yeah, I think that's also harder to do when you don't have Academy in your deck. But yeah, so I think that might be kind of a pipe dream. I think the two other things to know here, firstly, the Hydroblast in the sideboard. I think this card is phenomenal at the moment. Because so many of the blue decks are blue-red X, so like the Breach decks or the other Tinker decks, you're going to face a lot of Pyroblast, and so this helps to win those kind of fights. And then against Breach in particular, they have often like their own Ragavans, Arcanists, Lelias, and this is the best answer to all of those on the stack or in play. And then also their like big finish is Underworld Breach, which you need to fight on the stack most of the time, because if it resolves, they're going to have all of their previously cast interaction at their disposal. So Hydroblast is like a really necessary answer to that. So I'm honestly at the point maybe of rebuilding this deck to the point where I have like a Hydroblast in the main deck and a Merchant Scroll, where the scroll can either find Ancestral in like that usual line, or it can find the Hydroblast as like this answer to all of that red stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of this discussion actually reminds me of the fact that I think Luis actually made top 8 of one of them. He got tired of testing Historic and Standard, I guess, and decided to give himself a little treat of Vintage. He made top 8 with blue-red. I guess I would call it Breach, but there's like a very small Breach component. It just has just enough tutors to go find the stuff. It doesn't even play Vamp Tutor, it only plays Demonic Tutor. And it plays 3 Ragavan and 2 Lilila. So it's kind of a similar deck to this, except there's no Tinker. So that's like kind of an interesting avenue to go if you don't think Tinker is good in Vintage.
That's so this is the shell that split the finals of the Vintage Challenge a few weeks ago, and that quickly became one of the go-to blue decks in the format. And yeah, I would expect to play against a lot of Breach. But back in the day, part of the argument for Breach was, oh, this is good against Doomsday because you have Brain Freeze in your deck, which I think that was always a little overstated. And Doomsday is not really a problem the way it used to be, but now people are realizing Breach is just like a very compact kill that you can put in a deck like this as, again, one of those slots where you just do whatever you want.
So for those of you who are wondering, I think the minimal amount of slots you need for Breach for most blue decks is just 2 Breach, 1 Brain Freeze. And because everyone plays Black Lotus anyways, so you can set up the combo. Most of these lists don't play Lotus Petal because I think it's like generally not a very good card is how I would put it. And yeah, I think it's pretty easy to sneak it in, and that's what Luis did. He's not even playing Vamp Tutor, actually. He's more heavy on the card draw and less on the top deck tutors.
Yeah, I do like the, I think it's the Brian Cook list, right? That Alex McKinley won his Eternal Weekend with, where it's basically just, in classic Brian fashion, just here's all the combo stuff and here's all the stuff that enables the combo stuff, and we're not faffing around with any of the creatures or anything like that. I would maybe make some changes to that deck, like the 4th Urza Saga or whatever, but that approach philosophically appeals to me a little bit more there. The other thing to note is we have a Strip Mine in the main deck and Wasteland in the sideboard. So initially I had some Alpine Moons, and for a while that over the Pithing Needles, and that was one of the draws to being in red for me. It was Needle and Alpine Moon are kind of the same against Bazaar, although Needle is actually better there because you can cast it off like a Mox Pearl or whatever. But then also Alpine Moon deals with Urza Saga against the other Saga decks. What I realized was that I actually kind of want a Strip Mine effect, and like actual Strip Mine, obviously being the first one there, where often against in a Saga mirror, you want to tutor for an answer to their Saga, and Strip Mine is just by far the best card for that job. But then also, Strip and Wasteland are great answers to Bazaar, the card, and also against shops, where they help you cast your spells, so just additional colorless mana sources that also stymie their Sagas and their workshops and so on and so forth. And sometimes you even get into like these funky spots where you have a fetch, they have a Wasteland, you waste their waste, and then that clears the route for your Saga or something, or it protects your dual land, or just a bunch of stuff like that. So I think the waste effects, even in these kind of wonky blue decks where they seem out of place, like the first one I think is very good, and additional versions of that are good replacements for some of the more narrow Bazaar hate, because it kind of overlaps with a bunch of different things elsewhere as well.
Yeah, so I think that covers most of the question. I guess one last question I have, which I think is specific to how I like to build Tinker decks. Did you find yourself missing the second big robot? I'm actually a big proponent of playing both of the big robots in the 75. Because I think an easy way to win against shops is to tinker for Blight Steel, and it usually just kills them. Like it doesn't really matter what else you do. Whereas like Citadel or Sphinx are often not good enough in my experience.
Yeah, I found myself coming down on Sphinx a little bit, where
Mm-hmm.
um, it's obviously fantastic against Bug. The shop decks now generally have more answers to it, whether it's stuff like Stone Cold Serpent, Metamorph,
Yep.
or Ravager shops in particular can like go around or go through this card a lot more easily. And
Mm-hmm.
then um, against stuff like Jeskai is going to have Source of Plowshares or stuff like that. Or usually these decks are a little more prepared than they used to be, and then it's not a good like backup target against Unfair Blue because they just massively go over the top of it. And then against Bizarre, yeah, sometimes Sphinx just completely calls them. Other times it's against Dredge, they can actually outmuscle the Sphinx a lot of the time. And I found myself in a few spots where it's like, okay, I've got my Sphinx, but if they just hit enough creeping chills, or if they hit like a second bridge here, then it's not even going to matter. So I've been messing around with other big backup tinker targets. So I had an Inkwell Leviathan in my top 8 list from a few weeks ago.
I remember that.
Just because blue decks can't kill it, right? And even against the white aggro decks, they can't kill it either. So it's always the biggest thing around. But that card is just so mopey and it never actually came
Yeah.
up. Someone suggested Mere Battlesphere, but again, it's like if the Battlesphere itself dies, how often are the 1/1s actually getting the job done at that point? So I just don't think that there is a universally good backup for that role.
Mm-hmm.
Blightsteel, yeah, as you say, specifically very good against shops. Didn't feel like I needed the help there, but yeah,
Okay.
something to consider.
I could believe that. I'm not a proponent of playing all three big things in your main deck. I think that's ludicrous. Just saying having it in the sideboard. I still don't believe in the lattice personally. I would probably just if I were to play this deck, I would just axe that lattice and play the Blight Steel in that spot. But obviously, they do completely different things.
Yeah. All right, I will try and summon up some replays here.
I really hope. Oh, you played a lot of formats lately.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend, I don't think I'm going to get to play the Modern Showcase, but you got the Pioneer Showcase on Sunday, Vintage
Yep.
Speed tomorrow, so lots of stuff to be focused on at the moment.
Well, you have to go. Yeah, you played a lot of Modern lately. You played 6-3, so you lost in top 8.
Yeah, well, okay,
Yeah.
so I got the buy round 1, so love to see it.
Oh, I see. I didn't even notice. Okay, yeah, that adds up now. So let's hope the replays aren't too buggy. But
all right, so effectively round 1 of this tournament.
yeah, did you take a nice snap round 1?
I'm not even sure what I did. I think I just like went and watched other people streaming the Vintage Challenge.
Fair enough. Because you had the itch. That's why you were there. You know.
Right. Okay, so pretty nice hand to open up for
Mm-hmm.
my first turn of the tournament. A little awkward that both Tutor and Tinker are currently uncastable with this hand, but I figure
Yeah.
unless I get completely high rolled, the rest of this hand might well be good enough, and being able to cast either one of these cards is going to put me in a really nice spot. And also Ragavan, if it lives and it's on the play, so that's more likely, that also can just unlock these in its own right. So feeling good.
So
Put him up at 6.
I assume you're never dashing because your mana's earmarked for Saga all other turns, right?
Well, it is. I think that actually is an argument for dashing here,
Okay.
where sometimes you just get to gun Tinker onto, and that's fine, or Tutor, depending on how
Sure.
things go. And then also, like, I might not care about Ragavan hitting past a certain point, and just
Mm-hmm.
activating Saga more cleanly is going to be more important. So,
So also,
yeah,
sorry. Did
go
you
ahead.
notice your opponent was playing 61 cards?
No, I didn't.
Did you just notice now?
Yeah, but maybe that's meant to tip me off. I don't know if there was a stock or a known list that does have 61. But
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just noticed those things. Like I don't really think it means that much, but it's just good to think about. You know. Ooh, this is the braid mirror.
Yeah. So now what do you do?
God, it's so complicated. All right, so they mulligan to 6. This is probably Jeskai, I think, but I mean, really hard to tell because it literally could be anything, right?
Yeah, does a braid tell you anything?
That it's slightly more likely to be Jeskai in my opinion if they play a braid, but
Interesting. I would have figured it's a little more likely to be some kind of big blue deck, but
okay.
so I think the options are try to get maximum value out of Saga against
Sure.
a hand that's reactive. And if they, this is like two threats that need to be dealt with, and then also a third threat potentially. Whereas let's say I try and shove on Tinker here somehow, and it gets forced to build, and then I lose at least one construct, and it's easy to see how that puts me in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
I could DT here, but if I'm doing that and I want to, if I want to still activate Saga, I need to DT for a mana source. So then the question becomes, do I get like another Saga? Do I get Strip Mine potentially? Do I just get a blue source to unlock Tinker? And if I'm doing that, then what should that be? Like maybe it's just DT for Mox Sapphire, right? So kind of a lot of different ways I can take this. I could also DT so the next turn, I can tinker with protection if my Saga's finding like Black Lotus or something, right?
Right.
So I actually have like a ton of different options here, and I'm still not sure, looking back on it now, what the right move was.
So I think actually based on what they did, I would probably just say go and activate Saga, untap, see what I draw. And if it's something like that actually protects your Tinker, just float mana and cast a tutor. Like, suppose you draw a Force of Will, then you can just float mana, get, say, Mox Sapphire, or even Black Lotus, I guess. Cast tutor, go get, you know, another blue card to pitch to your Force, and then cast Tinker, or something like that. I think since they have braided your Ragavan, I don't see a real reason to actually like have to, push on the gas, essentially.
Yeah, I did think about if they are Jeskai specifically, then I don't have to worry about them kind of going over the top in the same way, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
just DT for a second Saga puts me in a good spot here, right? And my plan for the rest of the game might just be don't cast any more spells and just activate Sagas until they die. That being said, if the DT doesn't resolve, like if it gets countered here, I'm actually like I can't activate my Saga,
Yeah,
and then
it's fairly
yeah,
disastrous. That's why I want to say go on this turn cycle.
yeah.
I mean, it's not unreasonable to cast either. Ooh, them. Wait, hold on. Did you just notice that you really severely mistapped?
Yeah, I did. I noticed that immediately in the moment. I was like, oh dear God, I'm an idiot.
Okay. Yeah, there's no reason not to tap your Mox Pearl, obviously.
And sure enough, now I get maximally punished because
Oh,
they get to
yeah.
dash, and then the treasure lets them hold up, Pyroblast or Fluster or whatever, so I can't shove on Tinker now, even if they don't have another land. So
Yeah.
I think I make a misstep here, and then also in the process just cast my spell in the worst possible fashion.
Yeah, that did not end up great. I mean, you're still fine, actually. Now this 5/5 is gonna be like, well, Ragavan, you
Well,
did you did
I
something
have
dirty.
I have one counter instead of two, or one construct instead of two, which is
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. My intuition said make a construct, but because you still can cast a tutor the turn after,
yeah.
that's why I think it's fine. Oh, this is actually okay for you. Like, I guess you're gonna get fluster anyways.
Well, I can't
Oh
Tinker
no,
and
yeah,
defend, so maybe
yeah,
I get
exactly.
Pyroblast instead, which isn't actually that good because if you look at what would interfere with Tinker here, it's either Fluster or Pyro,
Yeah,
neither of which my own Pyro actually deals with. And they only have one card in hand, so it can't be Force. I guess it could be exactly Force and Negation, but um,
mhm.
so now I draw Ragavan and I have three choices once again. I can either kill their Ragavan and just crunch in here. I can dash my own Ragavan, or I guess just cast my own Ragavan, or I can shove on Tinker against one card left in hand.
I'm shoving on Tinker now, sacking Mox Pearl.
Yeah, I figured that I can also just cast Ragavan, and then I'm
Dude,
on.
you sacked your jet.
Yeah, I know. I
What
was
the
still waking up. Okay, I was.
Okay. All right. I'm just calling it out because like when misplays happen, I'm legally obligated to call it. All right. I think this is interesting now. Now I guess you just cast a braid on that and get in for 7. 7 is a lot of damage.
Yeah, I'm a little scared of this Saga though, honestly. Like if they have another good draw on, well, I mean,
Okay,
so...
well, whoa, what? All right, your opponent got vintaged in top decks. What?
Just play a difference, Jarvis.
What? You hit their time walk, then you drew Ancestral? That's some unbelievable nonsense right there. But we live for that. That's why that's the rich dessert you were talking about, right?
Okay, there
Oh,
is
nice.
just like, look, there's just an apostrophe in the game log for some reason. Don't know how that got in there, but
also nice hand.
yeah.
I
So
would.
on the surface, this hand looks kind of strange, but I figured that
Yeah.
I can actually vamp for Lotus and just shove on Citadel at some point, even if if I do find an opening. It's a little awkward that well, firstly, it's awkward that I don't have an answer for this, but then also I can only really cast one of these at this point.
Yep.
I
assume there's no Badlands in your deck. Badlands would solve most of your problems.
Absolutely not.
Ooh, well, Hydroblast.
Yeah, so that was a phenomenal draw.
Also, you actually slightly punted. You know why? If they have another red source, they can just redash another rag. You should just let it go to combat and Hydroblast it.
You're right, I should. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've played a lot with and against Ragavan. I spend time thinking about these things. For better or worse. I don't know. Probably worse.
Yeah.
So,
but you see here how good Saga is in these bloomers, right? Where like what looks like it was going to be a decent hand now is kind of under the gun.
So I actually have a strange suggestion. What would have happened if you had just gotten a red source in Castle Alila instead of Ancestral Recall?
I think that's an interesting option. At that point, I think I'm kind of relying on Lydia to win the game by itself because think about what's going to happen on their next turn. If they have any additional artifact, they play that and they pass. They can make a 4/4 construct, which I can't really afford to attack into. Okay. And then I'm still behind on board against the Saga. I did consider like, what if I get strip mine or something and just strip it, but then I'm not any closer to casting either of my spells. I could get my own Saga, but then like I'm behind in the Saga race and I can't like cast other spells and use Saga at the same time. So I figured just getting more actual resources via Ancestral was the right line, even though I can't like bank on any specific thing happening. And I get kind of a mixed bag, right? Where like I have two fantastic spells here, but my Tinker Target's already in my hand, and I'm in the same problem that I would be if I just got Saga in the first place. So
did the replay already crash?
Ugh.
I think this might be one of those games where it's not. Yeah, this replay is just completely screwed. That game is. So whatever.
Huh.
Do you remember vaguely what happened or not really? It might have been just too long.
I'm pretty sure I just died to the Saga at some point.
Okay. Wait, isn't this just the same hand?
Well, this is the same game. I'm just saying if there's any hope of restoring it.
No.
No. Okay.
So basically, I think what can happen is the files can get corrupted or something like that, and that probably is what happened.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I don't know why that game would be corrupted and not the others.
But at some point, also you sided into 61 this game apparently.
Oh, so I did.
Well, let's take a look. Let's take a gander.
Okay. So here are the dungeons.
Why are we looking at the dungeons?
Look, neither of us completed any of these. We're so bad.
Yeah. Do you have a venture into the dungeon card in your deck?
You realize that, well, firstly, no one in any format has any of those cards in the deck anymore, but this part of the drop-down menu will be there for the next 15 years. You realize that, right? It's just with us for the rest of time now.
No, I think exactly one deck has that card, and that's Asurek. Oloran has Asurek the Archwitch.
Which doesn't even care about the specifics of any of it, because you just, win the game on the spot.
So you sided in 1, 2... Wait, there's a Hydroblast in our sideboard? I'm so confused.
What's going on here?
I don't know. Well, whatever. Okay, this hand is really good. So, really good might be a stretch, but this is a solid hand, is how I would put it, right?
Yeah, I mean, no complaints here. At least so far. We can find something else to complain about in a second. So it gets bolted, and now I have the choice of, do I want to just kind of move in on this Ragavan? I decide not to because I think
Yeah.
Hydroblast is going to be a good card by itself, and then the Forcible it's like a pretty valuable defensive tool. I have the top with a fetch to find action, so I don't feel any need to do anything yet. And the
Oh,
Saga is,
that's just
I'm
insane. Because
thrilled.
I
Yeah,
was thinking about what would happen if we didn't draw like an action spell, but this works out pretty well. Time walk. Do you care? I think you kind of do actually.
yeah. I wasn't happy about it. Um,
For sure, spinning first. Oh, that makes it a lot more palatable, I think.
okay, so now, what do you do?
I mean, hmm. Yeah, it's kind of complicated, isn't it? I think I would probably draw the forcible and pitch it to force, and leave the. So we're gonna leave up Hydro and waste their Saga next. Oh, that doesn't work out great, actually.
No, because ideally we
Yeah,
want to
activate.
activate our
Yeah.
own Saga. So I think the conclusion I came to was that it's going to be hard to find a window to actually cast Narset in this game.
Oh, so you want to pitch Narset to force?
And even if it resolves, like if they have kind of a Saga supremacy, then if they have a bigger construct,
Right.
then they can just attack it down. So that actually, I think, is a fairly common dynamic in the Blue Mirrors now. And I've been a little less
Yeah.
impressed with Narset than I used to be. I mean, still a fantastic card, of course, but um, not the ace it once was. But instead,
Oh, I see.
okay,
Actually,
yeah,
this also makes sense, and let's explain why. I don't think you really want to redraw and have to replay this top because your mana is spoken for all of the turns. You still have access to Force plus Blue card on the next turn cycle if you draw the Narset, right there. I think
exactly.
playing the Delta might have been a mistake, actually.
Yeah, what was I thinking here?
I don't know. What were you thinking? Because now you have to fetch away the guaranteed Blue card, which I think
I
is
mean,
kind of
I
problematic.
was definitely thinking. I had a reason, but I think it was a bad reason in retrospect. Maybe I thought that like I'm happy kind of flipping my top for the blue card, and then
I mean, but now the issue
if I'm
is
doing that, then it makes more sense to just
I think you should
yeah.
just play the Wasteland actually, but because now you're in a really awkward position. Like,
Oh
okay,
no. This is why it was. So what I wanted to do was activate Saga now with the third chapter and be able to cast my Wasteland and pop off theirs. Um, which I can't do if the Wasteland is
oh,
my
I see.
second other mana source
Okay, I
when it's on
see.
the
So
stack. Yeah,
you're oh, this is actually some classic amulet planning. This is like
yeah,
five head amulet land sequencing actually,
yeah.
and key
So
obviously makes sense. For those of you who haven't seen this interaction, what you can do is you can put the top draw on the stack, respond with untap another artifact, and redraw the top. What this does is it draws you the a card, top goes on top, then the second top activation draws you the top back.
yeah,
So,
so I waste them,
oh,
and yeah,
so we have to take a blind draw with our top, right?
yeah. So this was the issue with not flipping the top for the Narset, which
Mm,
I like what I did otherwise, but I think even just having with these construct tokens, having force plus blue card, like that's one line of defense,
yep.
and I can maybe just push on these enough to win the game. And I don't think I'm going to need the filtering there. And like, I guess I could just not waste the Saga. That is also an option to maintain the top to find a blue card, but I don't like that.
I think wasting the Saga is good, actually, given the board
Yeah.
state you're on.
So I
But
kind of get max punish here, and I don't even know if had I found the blue card, like they have three cards left, so maybe one of them is, quite likely to be a Pyroblast or something. But with the way this game kind of falls apart from here, it does make you wonder.
so you ended up losing the match, right?
Yeah, so they Hercules me, and now I'm just dead to rights. So kind of
Yeah.
a frustrating way to go. And now 1-1 in the tournament, effectively 0-1, but
Yeah, but a win is a win. All right. Simsy. Okay, so we've mulliganed to 6. Also, I assume you did not look up any of these people beforehand, right?
Oh, I looked up all of these people beforehand,
Okay,
but sometimes it's
yeah.
there's no information or it's unclear exactly what it suggests. So what we see here, I mean, no, I don't ship this back. This
You
is kind of
definitely should not mulligan this on 6 cards, I think. And you should
th-
definitely put back the Ragavan, I think.
yes, which I do, and I think this is an example of how Ragavan can be a little awkward sometimes.
Well, I mean, any colored spell is awkward in this hand. It's just that I think the blue card is the highest priority one.
Well, yeah, the blue card's pitch forcible and can maybe, yeah. Okay, so I see.
I see. Wait, what's that veil of? Wait, so this is Rug?
So now I'm staring over at this, in theory,
Maul?
collector oof, which stops me from, taking any game actions, protected by a main deck veil of summon. I'm thinking, oh god, this is
This is a weird looking deck. I have not
kind of
seen a lot of.
terrifying.
I've not. I mean, the Snapcaster Mage is definitely weird. But I think it looks like Rug, and you can tell because of Scalding Turn, generally. I guess it doesn't actually, like, tell you, but.
Yeah, I mean, if it could be bug, right, where it
Mhm.
versus delta is going to be exactly the same. So now I'm thinking, all right, well, this is promising. I definitely want to develop the land, but then I'm thinking, what's the best point to attempt the ancestral recall? And
I would just do it on their upkeep, I think.
I think that's what I end up going with.
And I am definitely okay shuffling away the top. I don't think you really need it that much. Alright, so you waited. And they also played Delta instead of the Tarn that you knew about, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake to wait. Maybe I was hoping that they would just tap out for one of the two drops now. Um,
But I mean, they're going to, I think. Oh.
well, not necessarily. So now this is actually kind of scary
Well,
because
no, you know their hand, right?
oh no, no, oh yeah, you're right, I do.
Because of the mismatching
Yes.
Tarns. And that's why it is actually very critical that you play the right land.
Is it because
Yeah,
of the mismatching? No,
yeah.
because I
You
saw
know
both of these. I think the thing is they played a delta instead of one of the
exactly.
tarns.
You're
Yeah.
supposed to play the second Tarn out. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree on that. So
Uh,
now the coast is clear. I just get to pop off.
well, that was not exactly. Well, that's pretty good then. Ooh, you even get to sneak in the brainstorm. Yeah, I mean, they veiled in response to your Tinker to try to hit a force, right?
Yes, and if they hit, obviously because of veil, I wouldn't be able to counter. So I have to counter the veil.
Yep.
Um, so I get Sphinx, and now it's like, well, do they respect Sphinx? Do they have the one of Brazen Burrow in their deck or something? And
It's
can they
usually
find it
not.
before? Yeah,
Usually not in the main decks of these decks. It's usually in the sideboard. So I guess they are bug, but they're a very weird version of bug, right?
yeah. So
I
time walk
don't.
there means it kind of cuts a turn off their
Yep.
respective clock.
I don't know if this is. Wait, why did they attack with oof?
So they were trying to get a thing they could eat with Shaman to go up to
Oh,
7.
sure. Yeah, so clearly not. Yeah, you're right. Obviously, that's correct.
Yeah.
So Snapcaster probe. No, what was Snapcaster? Time walk. I see it.
Yeah. So this is actually like a little scary potentially, but um, if they don't have anything to draw to, then they could. Really doesn't matter, right? Like they just can't overpower it from this spot. Um, so fairly straightforward there, and
So for those of you who are asking, that is the matchup Sphinx's of Steel Wind is ideally for. That
yes,
and Bazaar decks, generally speaking. And
yeah.
yeah,
So sideboarding here, I take out Vault Key because in the
yep.
face of Collector U, Force of Vigor, Oko, and so on, it's just very unreliable.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise for Citadel, I'm so often just going to be tinkering for Sphinx if Tinker resolves that having this like clunky artifact in my deck, which if my life total's under pressure, then it's not great either, not where I want to be. Narset can get attacked down quite easily, and then Khan is just slow and doesn't do anything and gets attacked. So
And Karn's really bad versus Collector Oof as well because like you will not even be able to get to the mana necessary pretty
yeah.
often.
So This hand is not too inspiring, but I figure, okay,
Yeah.
I can like interact with stuff for a bit. I have several mana sources, so I don't just get wasted out of the game. And then I have a lot of. If I draw an action spell, this hand becomes very good because I now have action and several forms of protection. So it doesn't have everything I want, but I'm not going to mulligan.
Yeah. I mean, just having a lot of mana sources in your hand versus bug, I think, is kind of a key thing. Well, oh, you drew a Mox?
Yeah.
So it's time to cast Explore.
I think it is, and I'm actually almost hoping that I get Force of Vigor here because I have no current use for either of these. And if I draw a Saga or something like that, then I want that to be protected instead.
Oh, I think they don't have the Force of Vigor if they just pass right there.
You think they have to snap it off?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. It's just so juicy that it's a 2 for 2. It denies you 3 mana. Like,
Yeah. So I'm getting worried
okay.
here that this is going to be like an oof or something, but actually they just decay my Soaring, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, well, drawing more mana sources is not really what you want, but I guess this still protects you from. Oh, wow.
Yeah, have to Pyroblast this,
Ooh,
and I'm actually
yeah,
thrilled.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is the shit you don't want to have happen to you.
Yeah, so very happy with that exchange. And now
What? Okay, this is why you had a good run. I feel like I'm being slightly sarcastic, obviously, but yeah. I mean, now they're just like full blown dead.
they are in the hole. Okay.
All right. Well, that turned around real fast. Is how I would put it.
Yes. And now, round 4, I'm once again up against Nuot the Nummy, who I keep running into in these things. And I love the fact that he just takes time off from the usual like streaming and he was in Rivals, right? So he takes time off from all of that just to play some Vintage and dabble in PO from time to time.
Well, so you know why? Because I think it's like playing Vintage PO is the equivalent of getting the perfect Vintage Cube deck, right?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting way of putting it, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes total sense if you think about his personality. Personally.
Right. So I'm on the play here, which means this hand is just completely just bonkers. And whereas on the draw, like maybe there's a chance I get turn 1 or something. But
I mean, I'm never mulling that hand. You would
yeah.
like I think I would if someone told me I should mulling that hand, I'd be like, all right, I'm dropping from the tournament. See ya.
Do you think there's any case with that in mind for just like playing Tarn and holding up Fluster, or even just playing Ragavan instead?
Nah.
Of doing this?
I think the problem with so what I guess I should explain philosophically how I approach these sort of mirrors. I always want to be the one to initiate, generally speaking, especially when they're tapped out, because it forces them. It costs them so many cards to like try to answer your stuff. Generally speaking.
Yeah, I think I knew he was on 6 as well, so that made it a little easier to.
I don't think so. I think if you scroll, it's like just scroll up. Like I don't think they mulliganed.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, okay, maybe yeah. I just skipped through the land drop or something. Yeah. So finding the ruby there was actually kind of intriguing because it let me flip top and just cast Ragavan anyway. And now
Ragaband.
Nah.
All right, so
it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, so that he's definitely PO because Mox Opal tells you everything you need to know.
So this, in theory, represents Fluster, but now I have so much action that like even if somehow he has like Force Blue card and Fluster, I'm fine, right? Because he just has nothing left, and I have Ragavan, and a top. So
yeah, I'm attacking with Rag first every time. Obviously, there was actually a case to be made for playing your land first, but Brainstorm means the shields are completely down. I mean, now I think he's just dead. Oh, he brainstormed to put a bad card on top, quote unquote, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a bad card for him. It's actually kind of insane for me, right? Because like, let's say I didn't have the Tinker, I would gladly just jam this Narset and feel good about it. But instead, I just get to do the most powerful thing in Vintage.
There is that Photoshop of me saying always be tinkering.
Tonka time.
Is it Tonker time?
Oh, it's Tonka time.
Right, whatever. Your phone's
Game
dead.
actions, Jarvis.
No,
Game actions.
We're. I mean, okay. I guess you still have the tutor,
Game
so
actions.
you can. So for those of you who are wondering, Dom could actually probably like Well, there's the time walk. I would say you just tutor for time walk, but oh, whatever.
Whee! Okay. Uh,
I mean, honestly, it's kind of funny. I think that part of the game is the least important part and the part that doesn't matter the most, but it's also the most fun part to watch, right?
Absolutely. So sideboarding here, obviously Pyroblast come in,
Hmm.
Wasteland comes in, because they have
Just
their own sagas and academy and so on. I found myself shaving a land, like a
uh-huh.
colored land, on the draw against them because they don't have their own waste effects, so my mana base isn't under attack. And I'm boarding in more lands myself, and I don't really want to get super flooded. And now, because I've got to sideboard, all of my spells are super good, so there's no obvious thing to cut. So at that point, it's like, well, what is left over? Unless I do want to present 61 again.
So, quick question for you: if they don't have Wasteland in their deck, should you cut Island instead of a fetch?
I think I don't have an island in this version. I don't have a base.
Oh, I see. That's
Yeah.
weird. Okay, but
Well, it is a little weird. I think
yeah,
once you get to four color in particular, you have the issue of like, does fetching a basic actually protect you from wasteland anymore? And often the wasteland is gonna hit your saga, it's gonna
yeah.
hit something else, and so you just want the maximum looks at, you know, I don't want to cut any of the actual dual lands,
Hmm.
and the fetches are so good because they are effectively any dual land and also a shuffle effect my top. So at that
So
point, the basic island isn't doing much.
one counterpoint to that is I think the actual value in Basic Island is against Ghost Quarter and Assassin's Trophy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I could see just like sideboarding the island, perhaps. I
Hmm.
think that's perfectly fine. So this is a kind of hand which, again, going back to this theme, is fantastic against everything his deck can do except Urza Saga. And so
Sure. Yeah, I mean, keep and lose to Saga is how I would roll it up as well.
you can't ever mulligan this. No way in hell. But you can see how I could lose this game.
I mean,
And
I
so he
would.
tinkers, and I'm thinking, oh god, if he has his own force, then
Yeah, whatever. I
it's
mean,
getting
your
nutted
hand.
on. But like, you get vintage sometimes.
I mean, yeah. I mean, well, what are you gonna do? Oh, well, that's a fantastic draw, obviously.
Yeah. And because this is basically the scariest thing his deck can do, and any of the big PO turns would require a lot of additional resources, I'm not actually that keen to hold up Fluster as well, instead of just
Hmm.
developing my Saga a turn earlier. Plus, with the Lotus, I can always just break the emergency glass there and cast the Fluster if I need to. So um, this is fairly straightforward here. And yeah, he just doesn't have much going on at this point.
So this is my issue with paradoxical outcome. I think it suffers a lot of the same issues that Scapeshift does in modern.
Yes,
Like, obviously,
that's a good comparison, actually.
it obviously is like a much more powerful deck. Like, this is just an analogy, not a direct comparison. But my issue with Scapeshift in modern is that you have all of these mana sources, and you basically only have a few really big plays. And really, the card Scapeshift doesn't work without a lot of lands. Similar to paradoxical outcome, doesn't work without a lot of artifacts. So you run into issues just having to draw enough artifacts and the card paradoxical outcome itself, and it's really weak to Pyroblast. So I'm not I don't really like the 8 cast deck for that reason. Like, I think it's kind of a scam deck, but I also don't really think traditional paradoxical is that good anymore, personally.
Yeah, I think those like 8 cast decks across all formats, that is just a kind of central structural flaw that
Yep.
they have. And so I've never been that drawn to them myself.
Well, we had the talk about trying to rebuild the deck, and we couldn't figure out how to do it. So, are you making another artifact here? Yeah. I mean, this just makes sense because they're at 16. They have one card. Their last card's paradoxical, and they managed to pop off. Great for them. Like, whatever. Um, I guess if it's ancestral, you can't really do much about it because they have so much mana that Fluster Storm does nothing now, right?
And also, if it was ancestral, they would have cast it. So it's like if they top deck
Oh
it,
yeah,
or
yeah.
I guess if they have a York Will or something in their deck, then I get punished here.
I
But
would not be surprised if Numa played with Yoggle in his deck. Actually, it
although even
could.
then, he
Yeah,
can just pay and then still tinker, so it's not ideal even.
yeah. I mean, I think you can't. It's just correct to get your. He's at 11. Like, if you find one more artifact that's literally just
Yeah.
prismatic ending on a construct. Well, we've seen the song and dance before. Trying to remove the constructs one by one is really not a good exchange.
Yeah, like I would be concerned about, Hurgle's recall or dress down or something from the spot, but Hispanic ending is so whatever.
I've actually found that to be an issue sometimes in Modern, where like, yeah, hypothetically your deck is good versus Urza Saga, but when you don't draw any of the K commands, you only draw like Fatal Pushes, you actually can lose to Urza Saga as well, from like the Grixis or Rakdos style decks. Well, kind of think he's going to die to this construct. And also, don't forget the flavor text on Manifold Key.
Yeah. I find that mode comes up surprisingly often, actually.
I think it comes up often when specific. Oh, what happened?
Oh, so yeah, this is kind of scary. So he finds the Lotus with the third chapter and just casts Citadel, and I'm like, oh dear God. But yeah, he bricks, and it just hits a clump of lands, and so now, yeah, the contracts are lethal here.
Yeah, but actually, he had a pretty good shot at just killing you with that, which is kind of funny. Oh, was that game one or game two?
That was game two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, game one, you just tinkered him, right?
I tonkered.
Conquered. Wait, okay. You know what, Dom? We have to have a talk about what avatar you use.
Why?
Do you like Collector Oof?
I hate Collector Roof, but I think it
Ugh.
sums up my personality very well. I'm just like a mischievous little gremlin. And then also, I won it for doing well in Vintage, so it puts the fear of God into my opponents, who know what it means.
But they have a Monastery Mentor. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, they also have a Vintage Prestige avatar, and theirs is like a good card and a fun card instead of whatever the hell
Yours
this
is
shit
a miserable Magic card. Like, your card is just... You know how Null Rod is not fun? Collector Oof is like also not fun and a lot more easy to find in a lot of formats.
Yeah, this is what every like vintage bug player actually looks like. It's just, this is the expression on their grimy little faces. Anyway, so also we should talk about how we tie in the die roll, and then we tie again, and then I win by a 3 to their 2, which could have avoided this through some other method, but I guess if it's Modo doing the work for you, then
it doesn't matter. The computational power it takes for that. Also, if you do roll 1d6 for both people, you tie 1/6 of the time, so it's not even that unlikely. I can't wait for someone to tell me I'm wrong too. Actually, I'm just waiting for it.
Bazaar of Baghdad Gaming.
I mean, you can cast Tinker next turn for Sphinx of the Steel One, but I guess Grief. Okay. So
which I have to counter, I think, because of Bridge, where I'm just paying 1 life to
stop a zombie. Yeah.
Yeah, which in turn like maybe stop the therapy but this is still kind of terrifying.
I mean, I'm casting Tinker. I'm putting Sphinx of the Steel One in play and seeing if they can.
No,
win.
You're not. No, you're not.
Sad. I mean, now you're actually 9,000% dead, which can happen.
That's what's bizarre for you. I had turn 2 Tinker on the play with Force Backup, and it wasn't close to,
Well, I think Grief was a phenomenal addition to that deck. Like,
yeah.
If Grief is what Unmasked wanted to be all those years, where I played Unmasked, but Grief would have been so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is a super keep for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I do keep this. Yeah.
I mean, you have a Strip Mine for Bazaar, you have Soul Guide Lantern, and you have Force behind. And if you draw Blue Source, then you really are humming,
Yeah. Also, I think if they... Okay, so I don't play the Lantern here. I figure that...
Force of Vigor Hedge, right?
Force of Vigor Hedge, I think they might end up using Force of Vigor anyway with this start. Like, if I don't draw a land, right? They play Bazaar, they pass back, I strip their Bazaar and just pass. They probably pop this off. I don't know. And I think if they have their own waste, they might... Let's say they have, like, Wasteland Bazaar. They might waste my strip first and then... have a protected Bazaar. So I figure I can probably afford to wait. This is nice now because, I mean, this phenomenal draw, but also Soul Guide Lantern specifically, I get to exile the 1 dredger to stop them from slow dredging.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So they misstep. And so, would you fight back over this?
Interesting question. I think I probably wouldn't actually. I would just
Yeah.
force any force of vigors because, like, suppose that you win this fight, which I think you're pretty likely to, but they have force of vigor for your soul ring and pithing needle. I don't think you're actually favored from that spot.
Right. I mean, I figure if that happens, I can strip the Bazaar in response, and if they don't have a second Bazaar, then nothing really happens for a while. And my concern here is if they get to start manually dredging, like what if they shell dredges into,
Mm-hmm.
Narcomoeba amalgam or something? I'm actually under something of a clock at that point.
Fair enough.
So, and even with this in mind, like if I ever draw a blue source, I get to ancestral. So I figured it was right to do this, but instead we just trade all of our cards.
The problem is trading off cards. I think is really bad for you, generally speaking. Like their deck is full of Uno cards
Yeah,
essentially.
and see, I get my ancestral grief, and I'm feeling pretty bad about things. But fresh on there, perfect draw. Just get to cast mental, and now I'm feeling pretty good.
I mean, you're winning this race. You have a Gray Ogre versus a 1/1.
Yeah, I think they just scoop out of boredom at some point in the next few turns.
Fluster's actually a really good draw because it stops
Yeah.
the Force of Vigor.
Yeah, Fluster is game over, I think, at this point. I guess they have to be like grief, force of vigor, but even then, they have nothing left.
Their 2-mana 1/1 fire is straight up losing to your 3-mana 2/2.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they get bored because that game is like really boring by that point.
Yeah, but now I'm on the draw in game 3 against Dredge, and if they keep 7, I'm just kind of terrified no matter how good my hand is.
I mean, but I'm going to keep that hand.
Turns out my hand is like decent, I think, but
they went to 6. But I mean, also the number of cards they have in hand is not an indicator of strength. It's just an indicator of how many disruptive elements they're likely to have, in my opinion.
well, also just do they have Bazaar or not, right? Like that's the first, litmus test of any hand.
Sure.
And there's kind of an interesting combo at work here where if they have like one of their weaker draws, then usually Narset isn't as good against Bazaar as you would think because like the draws get replaced with dredges and stuff. But if I can crypt away that dredger, then Narset can like be a lock in that sense, at least for a turn. So they have Hollow One, which is kind of terrifying. So now I get to waste Bazaar and clean out their graveyard, but I'm currently on a substantial clock from the Hollow One. And I get griefed, which is...
I mean, I think you can race a 4/4 on average, in my opinion.
I mean, drawing a Braid in particular, it's like, okay, well...
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So there's an argument for not exposing this Volk to the waste, but I figure I can just fetch the Volk with the next fetch land.
Sure.
And getting Ring and Top in play is pretty nice.
I think that's worth a lot, yeah. Ooh,
yeah.
The Pithing Needle is also probably going to lock it up. Like, Pithing Needle plus a Braid, I think, is just, like, lights out, pretty much. They also wasted on your turn, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So now, I know I'm going to a Braid. And I do it on that upkeep just in case they have Force Negation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no reason to...
And doing this means I don't get to Needle, but it's like at this point, let's say they draw, they Needle, like nothing bad can happen to me that turn. So the worst that happens is they deposit Dredger in the graveyard, which isn't great, but and like this is potentially scary, but now the game just kind of slows to a crawl, and yeah, they concede before I mean show them anything else.
Those top 3 cards I think are good enough to win personally. So
yeah, I think actually I had 2 Volks, right? So yeah, I don't think I could actually cast this Lalia anymore.
It doesn't matter. You can cast Tutor for Tinker, right?
Right. But I just thought it was kind of funny. So yeah, I think at this point, I'm 4-1, and it's a very small challenge. So
yep.
And my tiebreakers are great because of the bye. So despite the round 2 loss, I'm actually in even with a loss, I reckon. So just seeing what happens for this match against Achilles 27 on Jeskai.
Pretty good. Oh wait, I guess it didn't have action.
Yeah, it was just mana
Oh, I see.
nothing.
It was just 6 mana sources. I see. Okay, yeah. I didn't get a close look. Ooh, that's pretty good.
Would you ever wait to try and defend the Ragavan with Fluster?
Probably not, but you know.
Can't escape days, Jarvis, in any format.
I mean, I don't think this is really that bad for you. To be quite fair. Aren't the Great Creator, huh?
Yeah.
One good card deserves another.
So this is bad if so this suggests some kind of Xerox deck, right? This
Yep.
is pretty bad if I get wasted off either of my lands here.
I think if they have a waste, they should actually waste your Volk, in my opinion. And just
Agreed.
yeah. But nothing bad happens to you, and now you can just start going lol.
Yeah, I play second Saga here for the same reasons before, where I'm going to want to next turn make the construct and then have the fetch to
Sure.
cast either of these. That does mean that I don't get a turn of activating this Saga, but I figure like how likely is that difference going to matter versus not having Fluster backup?
I think I'd rather have the Fluster, yeah. Kind of looks like they're just gonna die to your sagas very easily without you doing very much.
Yeah, I think I kind of throw this game potentially. Um,
It seems like you're in such a commanding position. How could you throw it? Like, I just wouldn't do anything.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so I kind of like what I did here. I think where um, I know I'm losing one Saga activation from one of these either way, so I get the Soul Ring with the first one, so that I
yeah,
get to activate the second, but then
sure.
still have two layers of defense
I
up. So I
think
think
that's
that was
really,
good.
yeah, that's really good, I think, actually. And I think a lot of
Uh,
people wouldn't do that. So this is a dig. Your phone disconnecting. So, yeah, no, this is good. This is fine.
would you Fluster or Pyro there?
I think you're supposed to fluster because Pyro protects you from a bunch of things like Dak Faden or whatever, you know,
Yeah,
whereas
I think
Fluster
that was
doesn't.
my exact reasoning there.
I don't think it's really particularly close because also what can happen with the Fluster is that it's just dead like later.
Yeah, and so I let Narset resolve because again, like it's just gonna die. There is a case for snapping this off, making them fight, and then they're kind of tapped out. So, but it just didn't seem that necessary to me. I think also now, yeah. So I'm mystical because if I get Time Walk and get to protected, then that's just game over. And
Yep.
this way, I bleed a counter from their hand that now means I get to tinker with Pyro backup.
So I guess the question is, should you make a construct here, right? Oh no, if you just get mana crypt, this is fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you just probe first?
Well, not with Narset in play.
Oh right. Well, actually, no, no. Hold on. Counterpoint. No, never mind. There's no point. Okay. But
I mean, I could honestly just use it as peak, right, and not attack Narset. I think
yeah, that's
that
what
might be valid.
that's what I was thinking about. Then I'm just like, wait, no, okay. So what is their hand? It is. Oh, so you can win the fight if you want to. I wonder if this is actually a mistake.
To go for this.
No, it's not. But I was just thinking about it.
I could honestly just go for Khan instead. Like that might also be fine.
I don't think they actually have to counter Karn, but
Well, they don't know, right? Like, what if Khan is threatening Lattice next turn?
I mean, you have Lattice in this version. It's just like you
Yeah.
only have 5 mana. I mean, oh, nice.
So yeah, this game is yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're a -14. Okay, I kind of think it didn't matter what you did by that point because you got into a position where you were severely outmaneuvering them because of Urza Saga, essentially. Ooh. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
How did you exactly sideboard? I'm slightly curious. I assume since the steel one got out because it's like
Yes. So I cut Khan, I cut the third top. That might be excessive in the first place. Cut the Khan, and I think because I was boarding in so much mana, I cut some of the weaker artifact mana sources.
interesting. I probably wouldn't have done that, but I understand the reasoning.
And then I cut both the Abrade, which maybe just having the 2 mana answer to Ragavan as well is fine. I thought, I have Hydroblast and stuff. I should be covered on that access, but
It's close for sure. The issue I have with a braid is it's like really mana inefficient. So
the other the
I
other thing about Ragavan in these specific mirrors is sometimes like an opposing Ragavan is just a fine answer, right?
sure.
And so it's kind of tough to rely on your own one getting through.
Yikes.
Yeah,
Okay.
not ideal.
Wait, did they mulligan? Why didn't they have to discard?
They played a Mox.
Oh, I see. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, never mind. That's 7 minus 3 plus 3. Got it. So, yeah, you're kind of in the hole of this game already, but
Yeah.
oh, and you're not getting any.
Right. I'm just.
So you just give them the worst card, right?
Yeah. So this game is not interesting. They kind of high roll me, and also I just don't hit colored mana source in time.
Yeah, it was a risk you had. That I was thinking about the hand. I think I would also keep, but it obviously can lead to a game that looks like this.
Right. And yeah, I think I just back it in at this point.
Oh, so the shoe's on the other foot that you are too bored of a game where your deck doesn't function, right?
Yes.
I think honestly, what Arena has taught me is I kind of feel like that's a good use of your time to just concede a game if like not too much is on the line, which I don't feel like in that game too much was on the line, personally. Oh well, this hand has one issue, and it's if you don't find a second mana source, you are completely dead. But I also wouldn't mulligan. So what does that say about me?
Uh says I agree with you, I think.
Do you not play the? Oh, so you're gonna vamp tutor? What would you even vamp for? Are you just vamping for a land then?
I think I ban for Saga. Because my plan is
Oh,
vamp
I see.
Saga,
Okay,
play
yeah,
Time
no.
Vault, and then
Yeah,
they
no.
are officially on the clock.
So the question is how many waste effects does Jeskai play, I guess? The answer
Yeah.
is like 3, right?
Also, with this in mind, I wonder if I meant to just upkeep Vamp or something. Because if like getting my Vamp flustered is so backbreaking here.
Yeah, I think if that was your plan, I was gonna just play top on my main phase, but this also makes sense. If it doesn't get countered, obviously everything looks great. So are you casting Time Walk this turn instead of the Time Vault? No, because that's your blue card. So you're playing top? Yeah, this makes sense. Wait, so they misstepped your top and not your Vamp Tutor because they wanted you to have the card disadvantage, I guess, right?
Yeah, although I don't think that really applies anymore in a world of. Yeah, I mean, this is just.
Well, you have to force this.
Yeah.
And if you lose the fight, you're probably dead because you have no resources. And that looks like
Yeah.
is what happened. And now you have to top deck the Manifold Key manually. Oh, you got Shattering Speed?
Yeah. So from this position, I'm actually not feeling too bad.
Well, how
I mean,
about
Dig
now?
is.
How
Yeah,
about now?
Dig
Yeah.
is pretty annoying.
Yeah, I mean,
But I figure, if Ragavan didn't die this turn, maybe it doesn't die next turn. Um, maybe Lelia could enter the equation here.
what is being cast here? Red, blue,
Oh no, Moto noises. Oh,
mono
Dap
noise.
Faden. Okay.
They don't plus? That's so weird.
Wait, is it? Yeah.
It
So
is because of, I mean, like, lots of. Now
Do
it
you
just
loot, Jarvis? Do you loot?
the answer is general yes. Like I think we've been through this song and dance with the fucking Baneslayer Angel example. It's just like it. I think generally it's pretty mathematically correct to loot. There are obviously
Yeah.
some situations where it's not, but I think they're pretty rare. Anyways, I would cast Lily here because it actually one shots the DAC.
Yeah.
Wait, what happened? I think the replay bugged out.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what happened is I'm pretty sure they did activate this. Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah, so the replay just bugged out, which can happen, which is what I told you. Like
Yeah.
it's super unreliable sometimes, unfortunately. We saw some good games, but that game obviously didn't make any sense. How about
Yeah.
you restart your MTGO and see if it fixes it for the next round?
Yeah. I'll get that out of there.
Classic reboot and hope it fixes it, which is like obviously not likely to, but it could. Yo, your password is a bunch of asterisks. You probably shouldn't show it to the internet.
It's just Hunter 2, like everyone else's.
Hunter 2? I don't know that reference. Oh man, you still have Fake Shaver on your buddy list?
Should I not? Is there a...
No, I just find it. Do you know his real name?
I do.
Wow, that's a blast from the past. I defeated Fake Shaver on my way to my first GP cache. He was playing the extended Perfect Storm. And I earwig squatted his one con. Two is a old boomer Mimi. Okay. It's funny because I'm a boomer and I don't know that reference. But all right, so round 7, I think you get a rematch.
I do.
So now you're ready to like win, right? Because that first round was just a warm up.
And also left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. So you know.
So you were seeking vengeance, is what you would
I
say.
was. Yeah. So this hand isn't inspiring really, but like it's good and has a Saga. So.
Also, their deck is not really broken, so like I'm kind of okay just keeping these. Although obviously this is probably
This
one
is
of
a
their
little
better starts. Although, do you think it's interesting that they use Lotus instead of the Mox Pearl to dash?
Well, they didn't have red mana.
Oh yeah, never mind. It's interesting, not really.
Yeah.
All right, so we can cast a Braid on it at least.
Yeah, obviously should have done this beginning of combat, whatever, but
Brainstorm. I'm making constructs.
yeah, I mean at this point this is I think as likely to be a blue card force as
Can we talk about how much I hate Mystic Sanctuary in all formats? And I think the only format where it was actually good was Pauper and Modern. And it was too good for Modern and too good for Pauper. And it's like very mediocre in Legacy. And it's like okay in Vintage, but kind of think the juice is not worth the squeeze by putting it into your deck personally.
Yeah, I know Bullwinkle was trying to fit it in his Urza Saga Wasteland deck, and that's just kind of haters, I think.
In the Legacy version, I think that's definitely wrong. In the Vintage version, I think it's a little bit more justifiable because rebuying Ancestral is really powerful.
Yes.
Same for Time Walk.
How do you feel about I've seen some Legacy Delver decks have a one-off Sanctuary in the sideboard.
I've done that before. It's like
Jarvis. It's full of grindy matchups.
Yeah. No shit. I'm not putting that card into my deck for like fucking elves. And I'll give you a hint. The card I actually played it with was painful versus like the other control decks. I think that sort of strategy is so outmoded now because what happens in the control matchups is you get burrowed to death, or like drawing 3 cards is not going to win you the game. Like,
well, I mean, I think now that you have iteration to buy back, like a lot of these matchups just come down to casting that card as much as possible.
I think you're just like putting Lonely Sandbar in your deck.
Okay, so now I'm obviously feeling pretty good about this game. They're color screwed. I have a second Saga.
And the most important thing about this game is you did not cast any cantrips. You just drew all these cards, these good cards naturally, which is kind of insane if you think about it, right?
Well, I put the good cards in my deck to draw them. Don't know what to tell you.
If only it were that easy every time. It's for the grindy matchups. It's very good types. Yeah, that's a fucking Magic meme. I should get that written on a shirt. I'm surprised it hasn't become like an SCG meme or whatever.
Oh, it was, Jarvis.
It's for the grinding matchups was an SCG meme.
Oh wait, I didn't cast Iteration. What am I doing with myself?
I actually think it's correct not to cast it personally, but that's
correct not to cast it. Also, didn't matter. Was going to win anyway. Ratio, scoreboard, etc. But
wait, are you ratioing yourself or are we ratioing you?
I mean, a little bit of both, I think.
All right. We just have to clarify because with you Brits, it could literally be anything. You're at 61 cards again. What the hell? Dom, were you just like okay, Dom, I have a serious question.
Yes.
Were you on the Mary J?
I was not, Jarvis. I was fully
okay. So this
lucid
is just all...
and sober. And
are you sure?
I did the math. And
are you sure you were sober? I'm just calling you out on your bullshit. Dom's greatest performance. Oh man, they have the misstep for your bolt. God, that's
right. Like bullshit. I was so unlucky. I mean, I didn't even have the lightning bolt. Then I drew it and got my hopes up, and then
they merchants rolled for Gush.
Yeah. So I drew another answer to Ragavan.
Yeah. So I would cast it now.
I can't fluster back, so it's...
Yeah, fluster and fluster doesn't work when they haven't tapped, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are
now I
just
dreamed. Kind of get hosed.
Yeah, and they can cast this Mystical Tutor, which, holy shit, look at that stack.
Right, like, I have to fluster it, because it threatens to get, like, recall or whatever. But they just have recall anyway. Oh, no, they flustered, right? So they...
Yeah, they flustered, but they could gush into it, because you knew about the gush that they scrolled for.
Yeah.
Very weird game. They scrolled for Gush instead of the other thing. That's kind of weird, but, you know. There's probably a reason for it that I'm not thinking of. By the way, also all of your get out of jail free cards are kind of shut off because they hit your Citadel.
Yeah.
So it's like actually pretty hard. And yeah, now you're just blue. God, it's for the grindy matchups. Now you're back to 60 cards. What the hell is this, Dom?
It's play versus draw difference, and also player difference.
Yeah.
A little bit of both.
Are you admitting that you're an idiot?
Anyway, so how do you feel about this hand on the play?
I would keep it. Like I actually think the reason to keep this hand is that Saga is so insane versus them that like I would actually probably keep like wastes, darks or a Darksteel, or sorry, I would keep Waste and like a 0-mana artifact that tapped for 1, and Saga. Like I would just keep that hand for some. And this hand's a little bit better than that, so I would keep.
Yeah, I mean it's incredibly weak to Alpine Moon in particular, but
yeah, whatever. I mean,
I think I like kept expecting to just get just blown out here, but
I mean,
also question. What do you vamp for? And when do you vamp for it?
Okay, so I would actually I would not cast Vampiric Tutor yet, unless it's like very clear that they're soft. But the card I would vamp tutor for is Time Vault, obviously.
I would like to. However, if they have Shattering Spree, that's now kind of disastrous.
Yeah,
I have a dead Time Vault. I've lost my key, and also, nothing goes well there. So
that's why I don't want to cast it yet. I want to see what happens. Like you have a little bit. Oh, that's a pretty good draw, I think. Yeah, that's a good draw. How about Saga? So the reason not to vamp tutor for Saga is to play around Alpine.
Yeah,
that's like what we were discussing, right? Like if you get another Saga, you're just compounding the problem.
Yeah,
so they got Wear Tear.
Yeah, they miscall. I let it resolve, and they get Wear Tear. So I'm like, okay, sure.
that's really if they don't have a Mox, it's like it's not even that good, right?
Yeah. So I'm kind of confused about where this game is going, and I'm thinking like, am I meant to at some point crack my Lotus just to have Power Blast access? Like it's weird. So I figure in the absence of anything else to do, I'm just going to make them tear my Saga, get a 4/4 out of the equation, and then potentially just try to vamp for another Saga, or we'll see what happens. Or vamp for Time Vault. Do I just go for it here? No, I don't.
Well, drawing brainstorm makes the answer very easy, obviously. Oh, that's interesting. What can we do with this?
Yeah, so this is weird now, but like I kind of have everything I could possibly ask for,
The question
but
is, how do you play it, right?
right, and like there, I'm kind of gated by colored mana, where
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm cracking my Lotus for red for Ladia, then I have Pyro backup, but then I only have it on that turn, and so yeah, I tanked for quite a while over this, and it's like, well, it's a nice problem to have, but so what would you end up doing? Do you think? How would you work through this problem?
I think I would not cast Mentor this turn. My instinct is actually I think I want to put back Pyroblast and Mentor with the Pyro underneath the Mentor and crack the Lotus for 3 red, leave a red floating and play Lolila. Or no, you should play the Saga first, then leave 2 red floating. Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh
interesting.
no, so sorry. If you do that, you have to put back Mentor and Vamp Tutor actually. And
Yes.
so if you're gonna do that, you should put I think probably the Mentor on top because that's still a good draw for next turn, and then probably just play the Vamp Tutor the turn afterwards and kind of uses your resources the best, I think.
Yeah, so I think what I decide on is I put Lelia on bottom, Mentor on top. I think my reasoning
Oh,
was,
okay.
like, what can the hand look like from here that I'm worried about? And again, I think the most likely way for me to lose is to try and shove on a threat and end up like wasting my Lotus, stranding myself without these. Um, and if I just pass next turn, I can set up Mentor with double Pyroblast backup, if
Sure.
nothing else, and then have the
Yeah.
vamp left over, and that all seems pretty good to me. So, or just sit back and keep activating Saga too. And
Well,
from
I
this
think
spot, if they have
yeah.
Alpine Moon or something, I don't even care that much, right? Because this
Yeah,
is
no,
just another piece of the puzzle that
right.
I have going on.
I think by this point Alpine Moon's too late,
Yeah,
personally. You can a lot of game states actually look like this where like Alpine Moon is your answer to Saga, but sometimes it's not good enough because it shows up after it's been like activated 3 times or something, right?
yeah. I can also imagine a world where, with keeping these, I can just like shove on Vault Key right away, right? If they like
Sure.
tap out for Dark Faden or something this turn, I don't know. Um, and have the double Pyroblast back up for that. So I think this covered my bases in the best way.
The Ponder didn't shuffle and have no land.
Yeah. So what does that tell you? Like, it's a highly reactive hand, right?
Yeah, I mean the Mystical Tutor for Wear Tear was already really weird. I don't want to cast anything now, I think, personally.
Right.
I mean, like, playing the Mentor is not even really that much better than activating Saga, right? Like,
Yeah. And also, it's more kind of time limited. I think if I'm doing that, maybe I should be just activating Saga at that
oh
point.
yeah, I hate this. This is like
Yeah.
what
So
this is unnecessarily aggressive for no reason. I do like untapping the key though.
yeah, I don't think I should do it then because it.
Yeah, no,
No,
that's
no. Okay, whatever. Yeah,
no. You're supposed to leave the red floating, and then once your spell resolved,
yeah,
then you untap the Mox.
yeah. So now I get to cast this here with the red floating, but it kind of puts me in that same spot of if I go for Vault and then like I get Shattering Speed or something. Well, now it's actually a little, you know,
Why don't
if
you
it's
just
like
get time
Lotus
walk
into
then?
spree. I think, do I? It
I
doesn't
mean,
show me.
it doesn't show you. We'll know in your next draw step. But if you just get time walk, I think you sidestep off these problems.
Yeah. So they have swords.
Yeah, that was the other problem with jamming. It was actually pretty likely that they had, I think, a removal spell that they just didn't want to use on a construct because that didn't feel
Oh, I
that.
got recall.
I guess that kind of works out.
Yeah, I figured that was like the best hedge against all of my stuff getting traded off with. Where
Yep,
like
sure.
I have ingredients to win the game, and then yeah, so I recall.
But I think this would have been a lot better if we just hadn't shoved on the mentor,
I
personally.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that
that,
was bad.
yeah. I mean, it ended up okay, but I think that's just because your hand was so insanely strong that
Yeah,
it worked out.
I think part of me might have been worried about what if my Lotus is taken out of commission somehow. But the only way that can really happen is Spree, and if they have Spree, they're already a bit limited on red mana, and they're probably going after
Uh-huh.
my construct anyway, right?
Yep.
So unless it's exactly Lotus Spree again, or maybe Land Ruby Spree,
Hmm.
um, maybe I shouldn't be too concerned about that. So Ancestral here, like I get to counter the first one. They get another one, but now they have 3 lethal threats and a fourth one, potentially with forcible backup that they all have to deal with at once. So, um, and I get to eat the Arcanist in combat. So they take a lot of game actions, see a ton of
Yeah,
cards,
but
but in the end,
the
it didn't even matter.
the problem with the game actions from their deck, I think, is they don't really have the ability to go broken, right? Like inherently, what their deck does is play like a bunch of one for ones and cast like a card drawer, right?
Yeah, this is the issue we identified of you can't just like suddenly flip the script with a Tonka or a card like that. All right, so I'm against Marcus Thibault, who a noted bizarre
Or
enthusiast.
enthusiast. This
Yeah,
hand's pretty decent versus. Oh,
it's
actually, no,
well,
it's not. It's actually pretty awful for Bazaar.
I mean, Fast Tinker for Citadel is still pretty good, but
But we don't even have the artifact, right? Like,
I mean, we have
I mean,
Ancestral.
I guess you keep, but like, it's very easy for this hand to go south. I think.
It is, but like, how good is the average 6, right? Like, especially on the draw when they've kept so many cards.
You also might just be getting killed, like by a bunch
Right.
of cabal therapies, which is like kind of an issue sometimes. But
It really is, yeah. So we know at least one is coming down the pipeline here.
and there's an amalgam, so you're on a pretty fast clock. And there's another therapy, and they have a bridge, so it's like kind
And a
of.
second Bazaar. So it's
Hmm.
like, well,
I actually think you're probably going to die.
yeah. And yeah, they therapy me 3 times and I die horribly. So
I don't think this is a very interesting one. Like this
no.
is like kind of academic getting turned to by Bizarre. But that can happen.
So game 2.
What I mean, I didn't actually see the
I'll
first
go
hand.
back and yeah, bring it up.
It didn't look great, but it also was very, very fast. You know. I really miss the days where this replay feature worked perfectly. Alright, this hand sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Whereas this one kind of fucks, right? Protected,
Yeah, I mean,
hitting needle on the play. Like,
Alpha Saga is so like you can go get
yeah.
more hate, so it's like pretty bonkers.
So question is what you put back. I think I actually put back the second Saga.
I like
Um,
that. I'm the like the fail case of this hand is to like not have enough colored mana versus Wasteland, I think.
yeah.
Oh, we didn't. Oh, so this plays around Force of Vigor slightly better, I guess. Right?
Plays around it better, and then also I can now start activating Saga potentially. Or I can even go Saga into Time Walk and
Right,
then
sure.
have that online sooner.
You just play top here, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just play safe. Like you're so
Still,
far ahead.
yeah. Still pretty concerned about Force of Vigor, but um, yeah. I mean, this is a potential issue though, right? Is not having that second Saga.
You can find another one. You have so many sagas in your deck.
Yeah.
So are we gonna okay, how are we gonna play this? I guess we're just gonna spin top.
Yeah, so just finding lands there. Obviously, want to set up tutor for Tinker.
I mean, they're not doing jack shit. You have infinite time, right?
Yeah. So I get Tinker. I spin just in case I want to reflip for another blue card, or might want to get like a different artifact to throw away, so I have more tops in my deck. And I'm not sure how likely this is to work exactly. Like, I expect at least one force. Like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So I force back, and I figure even if they have another force, at that point, they're so far away from manually dredging, they still are shut off by the needle. Like, I have a bunch of time and a top, so we're probably good. But yeah, this thing's just going to take it home very easily from here.
There are board states where they can actually outrace it, but it usually involves you taking a bunch of damage first from something else.
Yeah, I also think that's a bit harder for them in post-board games where they have like fewer bridges, chills, and so on average. Right. So first two games not really eventful. This third game though, it doesn't take long, but there is so much to think about.
All right, let's.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. First off, Sam can do a lot of things. Are the things good enough? Also, a braid is in the. Oh, it's for Hall 1, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. What can
it's
we
like
do?
The 60th card left in my deck.
We have 4 mana on turn 1. Hypothetically. I mean, probably keep, but.
This, in theory, if nothing else, is turn 1 Vamp for key, turn 2 Lotus Vault key.
Yeah.
And so, like, I figure it's so close to just popping off, and like, Forcible is good. Any like needle effect or anything is obviously good.
Yep.
I can maybe leverage a time walk somehow. Like, it's hard to ask for a better 6 than this, especially when my needle effect is so much worse on the draw.
Yep.
That I figure I kind of have to go for it.
Ooh.
So
that's
I'm like, well,
kind of brutal, actually.
Yeah.
All right. So, wow. And they have a Hall 1, and they have 2 shelves. Like,
yeah, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna die now. So you draw Manifold Key. What do you do?
well, the problem is playing key is like not actually very good this turn. I think what I'm inclined to do is just play a land and say go, and see what you like, and possibly vamp tutor for a mana source. And it has to be a land, I think, right? I guess you could get Soul Ring, but that's like kind of asking for trouble, I think. You definitely shouldn't play the key, I think, that turn. Because I think that's just like it leads to you dying more often if you do that. This doesn't seem good for our health though. I'm not gonna lie.
So, what do you vamp for?
Well, I'm actually wondering about their play. It kind of feels like they should just dredge more and try to therapy you a bunch of times.
So, what does it suggest they aren't doing that?
I think so. Reading into that, I think their last 2 cards are probably a force effect plus the appropriate color, if I had to guess. So taking that in mind, I think we should just vamp for a land, probably. And probably Volcanic Island is the one I want to get.
Okay.
Wow, I'm a genius. It's also like very obvious that I think that that's the correct play, in my opinion.
Yeah, you can see my clock though. I take a while pondering all of this. So, what now?
I mean, I would cast a Breed on Hall 1 on their turn, I think. But that's actually less clear to me because the issue with that is there's a lot of issues actually. I think the primary biggest issue with that play is that they have a bunch of bridge from blows and a therapy in the yard, already. So maybe you can't win a fair game versus them. So maybe with all of that in mind, you're supposed to just play the manifold, either a manifold key in Sago or the time vault in Sago. It probably actually has to be the time vault because you don't have a guaranteed mana source.
Okay, I go for option C.
That also makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was actually incorrect to do it this way. I should have cast Time Walk first, because if I get to,
Yeah.
if I draw a land, I get to do this with Fluster Protection against Force Vigor, whereas now I just, what was I? Oh, so I figured this is kind of the same position now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, now I'm casting my thing.
Yeah.
If it's Force of Blue, you are in good shape. All right. If it was Force of
Well,
Green,
I figured I'm actually in bad shape now because there are two Icarids here,
yeah.
and so any creeping chill is just game over on the spot.
So
And
I kind of
it's
think you have to think about what they can side out versus you. I think they
yeah,
tend to shave out on chills. I think you're
and
actually relatively safe.
that's what happened. Yeah. But I figured if there's even just like one chill left in the deck, they can deterministically dredge their entire deck and just most of it. They get um 11
Yeah.
cards again, and then 6 more, so 28 cards deep.
So if they have 4 chills in their deck, you're very likely to die. But yeah, they have to side out chill to make
And
room for these disruptive elements. Like what else can go, right?
this is the list that wasn't actually playing chill, I think.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Okay,
because it had the greater blue focus and so on.
sure.
But yeah, so I think what I should have done is cast Time Walk. Then, if I do hit, so I would have hit Mox Ruby, right?
Yep.
I then get to a Braid Chalice.
Mm-hmm.
Although, so this is a discussion that I had with Marcus after the match: is are you meant to, in their shoes, force the Abrade? Because if I'm casting the Abrade on the Chalice, like, what does that mean for the rest of my hand, right?
Right.
What can I do if that doesn't resolve? And you think you can kill me the following turn? Well, not kill me, but like you put me to 3, you cast at least one therapy and probably more, and you can just dredge through the rest of your deck. So I don't know. A weird spot, I think, but I think I was with perfect info. I was dead, regardless of what I did, because there was always going to be a spot where I was gated on mana and couldn't fluster back against the Force of Will.
Mm-hmm.
But everything kind of transpired to where I was able to do that, and I kind of steal victory from the jaws of defeat there.
And sometimes that's how vintage goes.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that game's really interesting because I think also them not activating the Bazaar actually tells you a lot about their hand.
yeah,
Because I think if they have literally nothing, they always activate the second Bazaar trying to hit things to therapy you with.
maybe are they meant to sacrifice a hollow one?
Thought about it. The problem is you only have one therapy, right?
Yeah, and it's so hard to snipe the exact one thing.
Exactly. I think if there were multiple therapies, you definitely could justify that, though. Right.
Yeah. So split the finals against Vertex, but play it out for clout, I guess, or lack thereof.
Nice blackout. This hand's fine. It's obviously they've been on Grixis Tinker Breach, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I know. So I know this is a blue mirror of sorts. I go for but this is colored mana issues abound with this hand, and yeah, so I'm just like not really doing anything, and I get dacked and I die, and it's whatever. And then game 2 is somehow even less eventful, where we get an exclamation point on the argument that I've been making all day long here, where
Urza
right,
Saga
so
just owns people to have reactive hands.
seemingly decent hand, not great, but can maybe kill a Ragavan or something. I pass. They play Urza Saga, and I'm dead. That's it.
Wow.
It's game over. Right? Like look at this.
Yeah, I mean you're just going to die to a pair of 4/4s right off their land.
Yeah, and that is exactly what
Wow,
happens.
your hand is really not good versus Urza Saga.
I mean, it's good against like every other aspect of their deck, but here's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, you are dead.
Okay, so a swift and brutal end to a pretty good run in the tournament there.
It's fortunate that you split, because if you hadn't split, it would have just been like very, very awkward.
Oh, terrible. Yeah. So I'll drop the screen share, but yeah, if anyone has questions about the deck or vintage as a whole, or any, I don't know, follow-up commentary on any of that, then would love to hear it, of course.
While they get questions ready for you, I am going to get some more water because my throat is killing me. So I'll be right back in 1 sec. But also, try not to make fun of me while I'm gone, chat.
I'll catch up on the chat in the meantime. Thank you, Mackenzie. We do aim to please the boomers out there who are cruelly underserved in the current content landscape.
All right, what we got? Questions? Tactical split? Yes, it was a tactical split. Let's see. Any other questions, chat? Your?
Okay. So yeah, any closing thoughts or discussion, I guess?
Apparently we don't have any yet, but let's see. Okay,
I guess. So I think going forward, like we didn't really see us use our own Ragavans to any good effect there, right?
Right.
I think I'm gonna look at like the Tinker Breach deck. I think like the Breach stuff is pretty powerful. I love the Tinker stuff. I think Time Vault Key is really good. So just like playing all of the broken cards and the good interaction and some good card drawing, kind of hard to go wrong with that. And if you view Ragavan itself as a kind of high variance-ish card in the mold of some of these other like more overtly combo-centric stuff, then I think that approach makes a lot of sense. Whereas like your deck isn't fundamentally different, you're just choosing different things to kind of put your chips in the middle with, and I think the broken stuff, if you want to call it that, is better for that.
Yeah. I think I'm a fan of playing 2 Breach, 1 Brain Freeze, and not any more than that, because that's just enough that it makes it really annoying for people to play against you. And I think Underworld Breach by itself is an okay card to draw a lot of the time, whereas I don't think Brain Freeze is really a playable Magic card most of the time, to be quite fair.
Yeah, I think Breach often, as like this one card combo, so to speak, is just so like there are a lot of spots where just a value Breach where they just play the same Ancestral twice over or whatever. Like you can find ways to leverage that to good effect, and then as soon as you have any kind of like Demonic Tutor or something in the mix, then you just go off.
Yeah, it's like Breach plus Tutor plus even 1/2 of the combo is so easy to assemble a kill with. Like you just like do things that are like Breach, Tutor, Lotus, replay Tutor, get Brain Freeze. Oh, you're dead. And the nice part of it is none of those cards are blue, which is like kind of the same theme we've been talking about, which is the Power Blast thing is very real. And I mean, if you're afraid of you're getting your Tinker Power Blasted, well, Underworld Breach is the perfect foil to that, I think.
And Breach can get like Force Figured or whatever, but usually once Breach is resolved, the game has gone on for long enough that you're going to have some, if you've drawn a Flusterstorm at some point, well, now you can maybe try and protect it with that. So I think the one question for me is, how good is the Lotus Petal? And you seem pretty low on it, and that makes sense to me. But it seems like it makes it easier to search a kill together without drawing exactly Black Lotus.
I mean, so by that point, well, let me see if I still have the list that I played from November. I did have the pedal, but I was kind of not thrilled about it. Let me see if I can share real quick. Oh wait, yes. So let's see. Yeah, I have the pedal, but I'm not very sure it's necessary. Like, kind of think the pedal can just go and you can play another Saga. Like, to be quite fair, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know I want the 4th Saga regardless, and I might, tinker around with some of the other numbers here. Not sure how I feel about the main deck Needle. Like obviously great against Bazaar, great against a lot of things, but same thing for the Hercules recall as well.
I like main decking Hercules more than you do, and I think more than Justin does, because I kind of think there is still enough shops that I want to pay it a small amount of attention. There's a few unusual things about this list. Is the main deck Dress Down I don't think is very stock, but it weirdly gets you out of a lot of awkward situations that you normally can't win through.
Yeah.
For instance, if your bug opponent has both Oof and Leovold out, and you cast Dress Down at their end step, you're suddenly in a position where you can do whatever the hell you want instead of not being able to do that.
Also really good against the the white creature decks with their Archons and so on, Thalia. And also it is a pretty good answer to opposing Sagas as well.
Well, I mean, saying opposing there is weird because it kills all of your constructs, but I think it does...
I don't think it's weird. I think there are a lot of games where they have Saga and you don't, and it's...
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that card is good enough to play 1 or 2 of in your 75, and I think it's one of the unusual choices that Brian and Alex made, and I think it was actually pretty smart, to be fair. Once I saw that, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. It's also a 1 in blue Cyclor, which is not the best rate, but sometimes all you need are just like Cyclors to get your breach going,
Yeah. I think I also do want some Hydroblast in the 75 somewhere.
Sure. That's just reasonable.
Very impressed by that card. But yeah, otherwise I think this is like a really nice core to work with. Just, do the broken stuff, and there's a lot of broken stuff you can do. So
well, were you playing 1 Tabernacle?
I wasn't. I've seen people move away from that card against Bazaar, and I don't know how sensible that is. It feels like it is a unique effect that can't be replicated by anything else. But at the same time, it is pretty weak to all the strip effects going around. And then some of the Bazaar decks are like the Hogak Vine decks, which can theoretically, pay for it or power through it. But I don't know. Maybe that should be a part of the anti-Bazaar plan, because just having that to Vamp or DT4 goes a long way.
I think the way I view it is, I think if you get their Bazaar via Needle or Strip Mine or whatever, the follow-up plan is to make sure you don't die to their hollow ones or maybe leftover zombies or whatever. And Tabernacle is the missing piece of the puzzle there.
Yeah, I could see that. I never know how scared I need to be of Icarids and stuff.
I think it's not that easy for Icarids to solo you anymore. I think it was a lot easier for that shit to kill you when they were able to therapy you a bunch and Dread Return of Flamekin Zealot, which never happens anymore, or Dragon Lord Colligan, or whatever nonsensical card that they want to do. But the decks are so efficient and streamlined and disruptive now that obviously they don't have room for any of that. So, and I think Icarid itself killing you is only possible when the Bazaar is unanswered as well.
Yeah. I do like that the Bazaar plan is just 6 different one-offs.
I mean, but that's 6 cards that contribute to stopping them.
Yeah.
And before people ask, it is weird to see Cage in the sideboard of a Tinker Citadel / Underworld Breach deck until you realize that the matchups you side in Cage, it's going to hurt them a hell of a lot more than it's going to hurt you. And in fact, you can shave down on that package. You can side out 1 Breach when you're siding in the Cage and stuff like that. So just think about that.
Yeah, I think I do like the first Tormod script for reasons that we've been over in the past, where
Sure.
just that being free makes it so much easier to like cantrip into, or sometimes you DT for crypt, or like you breach and then you get to buy the crypt back or something. It's just I think that adds a lot of flexibility. But if you think the Soul Guide Lantern, like maybe you want that in the Breach Mirror, for example, right, or something else, then I think I would want that somewhere. But then the question becomes, what do you cut? And then yeah, the lightning bolts are kind of interesting too. I think that if you expect a lot of the like Archon of Vermeria decks, then lightning bolt makes a lot of sense. And I think that between 2 dress down, 3 bolt, and the abrade, you have a lot of answers to all of that. So I like that aspect too.
In in that matchup, I think Lightning Bolt is much better than a Braid because I think that mana efficiency matters so much, especially when you consider Thalia and stuff like that. Because I think there's a metric difference between a 1 mana Lightning Bolt versus a 2 mana Lightning Bolt versus Thalia. You know.
Definitely. I don't know how popular those decks are going to be. I figure that like it's such a unique thing to be a part of Vintage that if that appeals to you, then a lot of people would jump on those. Yeah, Alex, I like I mentioned, I liked a braid for the flexibility it offered in the main deck. But if you're at the point where you're boarding in these more like surgical tools, and I think the bolt might just be better for that.
So this is a corner case, which I don't think actually ever happens. Technically, there are weird corner cases where you cannot brain freeze your dredge opponent out because you will die to creeping chill. So what has to happen is you either cast Sphinx of Steel plus Time Walk off your breach, or you bolt them out. By not playing a bolt in the main deck, you can't bolt them out. But I think it's generally not an issue because I think if you have that setup, you're able to brain freeze enough of your graveyard or your library into your graveyard to cast the Sphinx plus Time Walk a bunch of times, and that's almost certainly good enough, you know?
Yeah, I don't think that's ever actually an issue in practice.
No, it's not. I think the only way it's an issue is if you end up pitching Sphinx of Steel to your Force of Will.
Yeah, I mean, so this is yeah, okay.
I don't think it actually ends up being an issue. I'm just letting people know that it is something that can happen, but it's like I think it's like a 0.1% like reality in the games you actually play with this deck, and it's like you should just take the L's. Whereas like other decks have had that issue, but I found that issue happens a lot. Like ad nauseum getting like you you cast spoils a lot and you go past your like DOS's Oracle. I guess that doesn't really happen anymore, but it used to. Like weird shit would happen where the corner case was actually a lot more common than people thought. But I think this corner case doesn't really actually happen very much.
Yeah, I'm curious, Alex, if you all thought about like one of the big blue card draw spells like a dig through time to pair with the merchant score. But I guess if you just want to keep it efficient, then you can like a lot of the time you'll be scrolling for ancestral anyway, right? Or whatever. So yeah, maybe you don't care about that.
And well, one thing about that is I think dig actually kind of interferes with breach a lot of the time.
It does. Yeah,
like
it does.
It sounds silly to say that. Generally, a lot of the games you have enough heal for both, but there are some games where you're very thin on the margins for your graveyard, and then like you can't actually do both of the things, and it can be awkward. I think I would rather just have 2 breaches and no dig in these setups, and just have only ancestral to Merchant Scroll for as a card draw spell. It's a little bit light on the big card drawers. I guess you could play a Gush, but I don't really like that card as much as other people without Mystic Sanctuary in the deck. And you know my thoughts on Mystic Sanctuary.
Yeah, it's also so awkward with Urza Saga in the mix too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. Oh, I guess that it really doesn't work because like you use Saga as your land drop, then like it takes forever to get Mystic Sanctuary into play online. Yeah, I I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess my hatred of Mystic Sanctuary is actually even more justified now if you want to play with Urza Saga.
Yeah, I don't like Dak very much.
I also don't like Dak because I just think the games are won by mana efficiency nowadays because of Saga is so compact as a win condition and also costs 3. So yeah, I'm pretty anti Dak in this deck. I think it's fine for like Jeskai Xerox or Rug Xerox to play Dak still, but I'm pretty low on Dak in these style of decks personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that covers a lot of things. I think I'll definitely be playing a Saga Tinker deck of some kind tomorrow. Just gotta figure out exactly what the final slots are. Got some source, which I will try to run through a league or two before then. But
You got some sauce. Is it Johnny
yeah,
Hot Sauce?
it isn't. Unfortunately, I don't have a young Shroud lurking at the edge of my my photo there.
That was such a good photo. Yeah. All right. Let's start wrapping it up, I suppose.